Hello and welcome everyone to Real Magic, where real women just like you are creating real change, both personally, professionally, and globally. I'm your host, Kathy Forrest, founder of Celestial Forest Institute, and we're here today with Thea Summer Deer. Thea is a clinical herbalist, an author, and an educator. She holds a doctorate in philosophy and shamanic psychospiritual studies. Her involvement in alternative and holistic medicine spans 40 years, and she's currently teaching energetic medicine at herbal medicine schools, conferences, and online at Five Element Academy. She's the author of Wisdom of the Plant Devas, which is a lovely book. I have that book and it's amazing. And she's released 5 recordings as an award-winning singer and songwriter. Welcome, Thea.
Thank you, Kathy. Good to be here with you again.
I'm so excited to hear what you have to share with us today. This all looks so yummy. Your topic is alchemy and the law of correspondence. So let's just start at the beginning. What does all that mean? What is the law of correspondence?
Well, when I heard you were doing a summit called Big Magic, I went, oh, well, this is a great time to talk about alchemy. And the law of correspondence is a tenet of alchemy. It's one of the 7 hermetic principles for self-mastery. And it's how I work with the elements within an ancient system of Chinese medicine that's known as the 5 phases of transformation or 5-element theory. So, for example, right now we're in the spring, and spring corresponds with the wood element, which also corresponds with the liver and the gallbladder. So, spring is a really good time to be tending to liver health. So that's just an example of one of the correspondences, but there's many correspondences with colors and, there's a whole list of them. And it's an elegant system and an energetic model of healing that identifies illness and disease as disorders of relationships. So it's a study of relationships. 5-element is based on the law of correspondence. And it's not only a study of relationships, but also of patterns within a system that includes physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental, spiritual, psychological, all of our bodies. Mm-hmm. So it's recognizing the whole person. And it reflects a very deep understanding of natural law, recognizing that everything is interconnected and not separate. So it's a system that can help us to heal our disconnect from nature. And alchemy is a spiritual and magical practice. And that may be part of the reason that it has been outlawed historically, both in the East and the West. And I find that very interesting that, it has this history that it's been, because it preceded, the alchemists became the chemists, and then we watched science do this whole become more specialized, more specialized, more specialized. But this is the foundation of all of it. And it was and it's 5-element is represented by a pentagram or a pentacle. It's the pentagram within a circle. That's the diagram that holds the 5 elements. And we know that this is a symbol that's had a long history as a magical symbol. Right. And throughout the patriarchal regimes, it has been drawn with the point in the upright position. And the way I teach it is it has the point in the downward position, which also you might recognize that as what was called the witch's goat, the symbol of the witch's goat. So it's the witch's symbol, historically, if we're going to go back and look at it. But what the star at the top represents is the triumph of spirit over matter. So when we flip that to be downward pointing, which is what I've chosen to do, it represents the feminine energies, because then it puts the water element, which is the deep feminine yin, at the foundation of everything, which it is. right? That's the water that gives rise to nurture all of the other organ systems or to lubricate all of the other organ systems. So I've placed it at the bottom, and rather than at the top, which represents the domination of the masculine over the feminine, or
Mhm.
spirit over matter.
Wow. There is so much in there. That is like a whole class in and of itself.
It is.
But it's like, let's bring it back to our topic. So, how can we bring this correspondence piece? How can we bring that more into our lives? How can we begin to use that in a practical way?
Well, I do teach classes on this.
Mhm.
And so for people that want to take back their health, I'm teaching these classes. But I think one of the really simple ways that we can do it is by starting to notice the natural cycles and rhythms of things.
Mhm.
And to be mindful of that and to start to trust that everything happens in cycles.
Mhm.
Because the alchemical correspondences hold a key to our health and healing. And they show us how to eat with the seasons. So, to begin to eat with the seasons is a good way to bring this more into our lives. It teaches us how to live in harmony with nature.
Mhm.
And with the goal being to have a free flow of life force energy.
Mhm.
So chi, we call that chi. But if we can increase our life force energy and keep our vibration up, then we're going to have more access to
Mhm.
greater healing. And also by starting to connect the dots. I like to, this is something that I've thought about a lot, is that if we have these moments of magic in our lives, and we can increase those moments of magic that we have in our lives, then one moment follows the next, and
Mhm.
before you know it, what at one point seemed like an isolated event becomes a constant flow. So you're no longer standing by the banks of the river, but you are in the flow, and life becomes a magical flow because we've learned to recognize those magical moments, which really is, it's kind of like they say, well, this is a miracle, but miracles happen
All the time.
all the time. Magic is happening all the time. But if we can be mindful of it and recognize it and bring more of that into our lives, and then just start to connect those dots, start to connect those moments and make it a flow.
So there's a lot of faith put in science. And I have found myself even, trying to validate my magical things that happen with science. So, what role do you see magic playing in our lives as we move forward?
Well, I like what you just said, because really it's the opposite, is that science is science is now confirming
Right.
what we already knew in the magical realms. And the science is always changing, right? I mean, the only constant is change, but the science is always changing. So what you're saying is the science today is not going to be the science tomorrow. I mean, there's so many examples of this. Coconut oil at one point was really bad for you.
Right.
Now it's really good for you. Brussels sprouts will be good for you this year. Next year they'll say there's something about Brussels sprouts that's not good for you. It's always changing.
Mhm.
But what doesn't change is what lives inside of us, by whatever name you call it. There is a higher power,
Mhm.
and it isn't science. I got hair. Sorry. All of a sudden, I started to get tickled. And it isn't science. It isn't religion. It isn't politics, right? This higher power, by whatever you call it.
Mhm.
And we need to put our faith in that. We need to put our faith in ourselves,
Mhm.
because that's where the magic lies,
Right.
right? So by reclaiming the magic, specifically reclaiming an alchemical system
Mhm.
of magic, that's where the transformation happens. And we're in the midst of a great transformation right now. And we need to have a way of giving meaning to it.
Mhm.
So, one of the things I really like about this system that I teach is that there is an archetypical component. It's very archetypical in and of itself, but there's also an archetypical component that helps us to give meaning. And I'll give you an example of that. So the archetype of water is the philosopher. So each element has its archetype. And the philosopher is in relentless search of the truth, bringing to light that which is hidden. It's like a prospector sifting through tons of ore, and in this case, sifting through tons of beliefs to find the gem of understanding. And this water element that the philosopher is the archetype for also corresponds to the deepest organs in the body. So, so we're mining, from the deepest organs in the body. And when we have this perspective, at least for me, I have found that, with this, having this bigger picture or higher view of how all of this is interrelated, is that it makes me want to protect and nurture these organs in a way that the science is not currently giving us.
Right.
And magic, as you well know, helps us to embrace the unknown. And the conscious descent, if we could just be conscious of, this descent of the light into darkness, of the knowing into the unknown, and this is really a central mystery of alchemy, this descent into the unknown. But when we embrace the unknown, we become less fearful. And, that helps for me. When I'm less fearful, I'm more able to trust the universe is, bringing me everything I need in every given moment. And then that helps me feel like I don't have to control things so much. So I think it helps us to let go of the need to control.
Wow.
The magic is in the mystery. And if we keep putting our faith in science, science is very linear and reductionist. But magic is non-linear and linear. It's a gestalt, right? And we need this whole brain thinking, because the science alone isn't going to get us there. It's not going to help us to resolve our current issues, because we need whole brain thinking, right? It's like we need both. We need that reductionist view, but we also need to be able to see the gestalt of how everything is connected.
So I have many more questions, but I'm going to ask you first. Give us an example, a personal story of when magic happened in your own life.
Well, there's been so much magic that has happened in my life. And let me just get a drink here. I think I'd like to tell just a really simple story. And, I believed in magic from a very young age. When I was 8 years old, my parents had a friend who was a spiritualist. And they would throw these wild parties. And when she would come over to our house, she would always bring me a present. She was a spiritualist, but she had immigrated from Austria.
Oh, wow.
So she was a very mystical woman. And she brought me an Ouija board and taught me how to use it. She brought me an 8-ball and she taught me how to use it. So she introduced me to magic when I was very young. And I had already had a very magical childhood, because my father owned a zoo and we lived with the Seminole Indians. And so there was a lot of magic in my life. So I've always really believed in magic. But when I was about, I want to say 10, no, I would have been 8, so this would have been about the same time. I went to an after-school rec center to roller skate. But at that rec center, there was a guy who used to gather all the children around him, and we would all sit, on the ground, and he would sit in a chair, and he would teach us to sing songs. And one of the songs that he taught us to sing was Puff the Magic Dragon. So when I heard that song, I said, I have to learn how to play guitar and I have to learn how to sing that song. So Puff the Magic Dragon really was probably the first song that really inspired me to become a musician. And then when I got a little older and I went to Hawaii and I went to Hanalei Bay, which, they say may be what inspired the song Puff the Magic Dragon. But Hanalei Bay is shaped in a way that they say is like there's a sleeping dragon that lives there. And they sing about that in the song Puff the Magic Dragon, from Hanalei.
Yeah.
So I felt like, I just was connecting in with that, and Hawaii's magic, right? It's like everything about Hawaii's magic because all of the elements are exalted there.
Right.
But so this song has been moving in me. And then I got a little bit older and I was invited to come and be on stage with Peter Yarrow. I opened for him and then I got to sing Puff the Magic Dragon with him. And then I got to go to his house afterwards and hang out with him, and that was magic. I got goosebumps, the goosebumps don't lie. So there was just this moment of many moments, right, of magic because of a song,
Right.
and so I just wanted to share that little bit of magic.
That's extraordinary. We're going to have tons of stories like that, and I just love that story. That's amazing.
Yeah, so the simplest thing is like we don't know who we're touching or how we're touching them. He may never know how deeply he touched me.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, kind of brings up the question of like who are our heroes?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're talking about, magic or we're all a living myth, right? We're all living our own myth or writing our own myth. And, who are our heroes?
Mm-hmm.
And so he became one of my heroes.
Absolutely. Wow. From just a little bitty girl, and then you went on to do extraordinary things. I mean, award-winning artist from that song. That's amazing. That's just
because it draws us back, right? It just drew me back again and again because it's that resonant frequency. So it put me on a path, and then,
yeah.
the path is magic, to step onto the path when we hear the call,
Mm-hmm.
right? We hear that call. Is if we can respond and be willing to step onto the path, then it's going to bring us back again and again to the magical moments.
So that leads me to my next question, and tell me if you can speak into this a little bit for our listeners. Because I think sometimes we have this idea that magic only happens to other people. Only other people can do these things and have these magical moments. But I think magic is for everyone. I think we're creating our own magic all the time. So how would you share with our listeners how to keep magic alive? How to really trust in it, believe in it, know that it's going to happen?
Well, again, I think it's a practice,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's that P word, and I used to get together with this one band that I toured with. It was always like, oh, it's the P word, we got to practice again,
Yeah.
And, but it takes practice. But also by surrounding ourselves with opportunities for magic.
Mm-hmm.
So, to be present at the birth of a baby, reading books like Big Magic,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
Having something as simple as an altar ritual, having a spiritual practice that becomes a way of life. I mean, for me, playing music is a spiritual practice,
It is.
right? And it inspires me. It allows me to give voice to my emotions that I might not have words for otherwise. It allows me to, it opens my heart, it touches other people's hearts, and then it becomes a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I think when you become mindful of those magical moments, then you start to have a barometer or a way of measuring, the magic, so you feel, you can feel when you're moving into a portal, or you can feel when, something's opening or calling.
Mm-hmm.
And by, just paying attention, because I'm always looking for the magic.
Right.
Right. So if we can just, put that lens on, just kind of change the lens. That's why I love those rose colored glasses things. I've always been such an optimist, but it's true. It's like if you're going to look for it, you're going to find it.
Yeah.
And if you prepare yourself, there's a great story about the magical mushrooms in Mexico,
Mhm.
and where people can be walking among those mushrooms and never see them. But if they have to go through a preparation, you go through a preparation where you prepare yourself spiritually, your spiritual eye, to be able to see the medicine.
Mhm.
Because our medicine is never any further than we are right now.
Right.
And, so you prepare yourself to see that. And I remember, I think it was Michael Harner who used to take people down there and do that work, and that people were just amazed. It's like, well, we just walked through here yesterday, and I didn't see any of this. But once they prepared themselves and then they went back and they were like, then they saw the medicine.
Mhm.
So, that practice, preparing ourselves, making the soil fertile, preparing the soil so that those magic seeds can land and grow that magical beanstalk.
Right.
So
Right.
we got to do all of it. We got to prepare the soil. We got to plant, but even in that great little magical story,
Mhm.
he was open to doing something that was unthinkable. He didn't know it was going to lead to, he sold the precious cow and for this bean. Is like, what?
Right.
But
Right.
look what happens when we plant those seeds, and they can come from, the most unimaginable places.
Right. Absolutely. Um, so it's like my mind is flooded with questions of everything you've talked about. And I think the best place for our listeners to get more information is your free gift, because you told me before we started today that you are now teaching a class that um, is right in alignment with what we're talking about today. And so please share with us a little bit about the class and then what you're going to give our listeners as a free gift.
Okay. So I'm teaching a series of classes, but the class that is the seasonal class for right now is called Love Your Liver, Spring and the Wood Element. So you can learn a whole lot more about what I'm talking about in that class, and it is pretty extensive. It's a $75 class, and what I'd like to do is give participants of this summit a half off, 50%
Mhm.
off of that class. And you can find it through my website. Of course, I'm going to make a coupon
Mhm.
available.
Mhm.
So you'll just use that coupon to go right into the class. But the class lives at Five Element Academy, but you can find the link to it through my website, which is theasummerdeer.com.
Mhm.
And so you can find that link and learn more about it, but also you'll have a link that will take you straight through, and then you can learn more about it there too.
Mhm.
But spring is, it's the time of energy rising, right? So the energy is rising, and it's a perfect time to attend to the health of our liver. And
Mhm.
our liver is an incredible organ. It filters about 2.5 liters of blood every minute.
Oh, wow.
So it's working, 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 working.
Right.
And if we can learn how to support that, then we're going to have better elimination, digestion, everything.
Mhm.
And I like to just give this example because, if people have worked with holistic medicine, you may know the term an overheated liver or a stagnant liver, or, you know, so let me just explain what that is so that people understand how important this organ is to know about. Is when the liver's working, working, working like that, it's like a gear, let's just say a bicycle, gear. It's working, working, working. And it can get overheated, but what it does is it draws the water from the water element to cool itself.
Mhm.
But when our deep feminine yin is depleted, which it is because we live in an overdriven, yang driven society, right?
Right. Mhm.
Masculine, yang, overdriven society.
Mhm.
So what happens is our water element becomes depleted. The liver doesn't have enough water to cool itself. It becomes overheated. This gives rise to a whole lot of symptoms, insomnia. I've done some work with addiction and recovery work, and one of the things that I noticed is that people can do, because the liver is very vulnerable to addictive tendencies,
Mhm.
and is that this great work gets done on like the spiritual level and the psychological and emotional levels, but then if the health of the liver itself as a physical organ is not addressed,
Okay.
people will relapse because it becomes a vicious cycle. The emotion that corresponds with the liver element is anger.
Mhm.
So an overheated liver gives rise to, anger, and we need to learn a healthy expression for that anger. But if one is not healthily expressing anger, then it further damages the liver, and then you end up with this vicious cycle. So, you can, like, again, you can do the spiritual emotional work on, resolving the anger
Mhm.
and, having done all that emotional work. But if the health of the liver, especially in the case of, alcohol and addiction, but any way that the liver has become overheated, it will give rise to that emotion itself because of its imbalance. So it's like healing takes place on all levels.
Mhm.
So again, it's about the study, studying the relationships, and this is a class that goes into that very deeply.
Wow. That just is so potent and powerful. I mean, yeah. And I've been doing energy work for 30 years, but still there was a lot of information there I just never thought about, but it makes perfect sense. Makes way perfect sense. So,
And there's a lot to be angry about, a lot to be angry about. And so we need to learn that healthy expression so that it doesn't get dammed up,
right.
right? And cause, that
Mhm.
imbalance.
So this seems like the perfect time. I mean, after the year
It
we had
is.
last year, it's the perfect time to
And
do
it's spring.
time to clean all that stuff out. Well, Thea, thank you for that. Is there any parting words that you'd like to leave with our listeners as we close out our talk today?
Well, one thing I do think about is that, we're builders of consciousness.
Mhm.
What you're doing is, helping people to raise consciousness. And, what I'm doing, is helping people to raise consciousness. And I think about the metaphor of the pyramids. When they were building the pyramids, they knew they were never going to see the completion in their lifetime
Mhm.
of that.
Mhm.
That just gives me goosebumps. I think that is so incredible that you would, give your life to build something that you knew that you would never see the result of.
Mhm.
But they had vision. And that is a correspondence. The eyes are one of the correspondence with the wood element. Our ability to vision is rooted in the wood element.
Mhm.
So I think it's really important for us to hold the vision that we're building something right now that we may never see the results of in this lifetime, but just to keep supporting each other like you're doing by allowing me to come and share, and all the people that this is going to touch and all the other people that are going to come and share. And it's a co-creation, it's exponential, and that we're building something that is going to make a huge difference. We may not see it in our lifetime, but it's so important.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yes. The magic that we're hoping to create in our lives right now is laying the foundation for the future. And I love that. Thank you.
Yes, big magic.
Yeah, big, big magic. Oh, Thea, once again, thank you so much. That was so informative, and you've given us so many things to think about. And I can't wait to jump into that class. So
Yay. Well, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
you're so welcome.